What's up, everybody? This is Chef Jarrell, and I'm proud to present my very first video on YouTube. Today I'll be making bacon wrapped scallops. It's something I'm very proud of, something I've been working on for years, and I hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. As you can see, mise en place is very important. I'll be taking you through each step, start to finish, so that you can do this at home. Feel free to add your own twist to it and put them in the comments if you want to share. I'm always happy to hear other people's point of view on my cooking. To start, I'll show you how we prepare the bacon. But first, most importantly, preheat your oven to 350 degrees so that you can work everything at a decent pace. Now, I always like to take out as many slices as I can use for each individual scallop that I'm planning on cooking. And normally on one skewer, I can fit maybe 3 scallops or so. So I would say 1 slice of bacon, thickly sliced bacon, can equal out to 2 cuts. You just cut it in half like this. Try and make sure it's the length of the scallops, the individual scallops that you're using, and line them up onto the baking sheet as so. We're going to bake these off first. We're going to par cook them. So we're not going to cook them all the way through. When we're done, they should have the color of not being completely done, a little pink, but not too much, because we're going to put them back in the oven once they're wrapped around the scallops. Now, I always like to take out as many slices as I can use for each individual scallop that I'm planning on cooking. And normally on one skewer, I can fit maybe 3 scallops or so. So I would say 1 slice of bacon, thickly sliced bacon, can equal out to 2 cuts. You just cut it in half like this. Try and make sure it's the length of the scallops, the individual scallops that you're using, and line them up onto the baking sheet as so. We're going to bake these off first. We're going to par cook them. So we're not going to cook them all the way through. When we're done, they should have the color of not being completely done, a little pink, but not too much, because we're going to put them back in the oven once they're wrapped around the scallops. As you can see, this is 8 slices of bacon cut into halves, equal out to 16 halves for about 16 individual scallops. I would suggest you do a pan and a half of this. So follow the same format and you should be able to have enough for each, like a regular pack of scallops you can get out of the store or at a fish market. All right, so now I'm going to stick in the oven, and I would say letting them bake for about 10 minutes maximum would be the perfect amount of time. But it's always important to check to make sure that they're not overcooked. Every oven is different, and there's lots of things that can go wrong if you're not paying attention. So keep that light on. Be aware. Let's take these things out. Oh yeah, peep that. Beautiful. Now we'll come back and use these after we're done sauteing the scallops. As you can see, this looks to be about a max of 20 in a container. That's what I'm used to dealing with. And one thing about scallops you need to know is that they're very delicate. So if you're going to wash them, be sure to be not to baby them, but just be careful not to make any splits in them, because that's going to be important once we put them in the pan to saute later. So wash them with cold water. That's very important. Hot water will be something that will wear down the fish. And it'll be easier to tear apart if you use hot water. So just use a stainless steel bowl. That's the best way to clean them. There's nothing to catch onto them, to scrape against them, to make them tear apart that way. Be sure to let all that water out of the bowl when you're done. Now here comes the fun part. Tequila, baby. This stuff is exactly what you need to add some extra flavor and body without overshadowing it. And it's important that you use clear agave versus brown liquor because the brown liquor is harsher. It'll overshadow and overpower what you're trying to do, and you want the natural flavors to shine through. As you can see, I have my sheet pan and a couple paper towels. 3 is usually enough for what I need. I'm going to take the scallops, layer them out over top of the sheet pan, and I'm going to separate them neatly because you want to be able to pat them dry evenly. A setup like this is perfect. It's nice and wide, and use a wide sheet pan. You want to have enough space to get them some room to breathe on there. And this is what you're shooting for, something nice, tight, and neat. Take a few more paper towels and pat them evenly. Don't have to beat them. Just make sure to pat them until they don't cling as much. Try and get up some of that moisture. The reason why I added tequila before I pat them dry is because the tequila will have time to soak into them before this step. And it won't affect, you won't lose any flavor by patting them dry afterwards. It's a lot more work to do it the other way around. Because like I said earlier, you don't want the scallops to be too moist when you saute them. It's going to be detrimental to the caramelization in the pan. Now, it's time for an important sidebar before we move on to the next step. Scallops are known to absorb liquid very easily. So before we start cooking, they'll saute better if you take a moment to pat them dry. So let's take it over here and I'll show you exactly how to do that. Now we're going to move on to the part of actually sauteing the scallops. And one important thing for you to know is that you want a nice brown coating that's covering the entire bottom of the scallop. We're going to do both sides. Start by turning your pan up on high heat, as high as it can go. And it's important to know to keep the flame evenly coating the bottom of the pan. You want the pan centered, otherwise the flame may look over the sides or heat unevenly, and that can affect your cooking. Be sure to give the pan time to heat. You don't need longer than a minute, but you want the pan to be extra hot. You can take your hand over it and feel exactly how hot it is. The hotter the better, because the next step involves adding some butter. Now, I'm definitely one for the gospel of more butter, more better. But we already got enough fat in the bacon, and we don't want to like clog anyone's arteries. So I like to do a mix of butter and oil when I saute my scallops. So be sure to evenly coat the pan. And as I said before, I'll give some measurements as a guideline for those who's not used to cooking this way later. To me, I do everything to taste. I have my flavors balanced, and it took some practice, but it's definitely worth developing your own texture to everything. Okay. Once the butter melts and coats the entire pan, you can add some olive oil. Not too much, just a little bit. You want that to spread too and coat the pan. And it's going to smell divine. Okay. Now let the pan sit for just a little while longer. I definitely want to make sure that the pan is searing hot because we're going to sear these babies over here. It's important to get that caramelization. Not just for the presentation, rhyme intended, but so that you can get that nice crispy flavor that everybody loves when they eat scallops. Make sure that the pan is even on the eye before you get started, and evenly place each scallop. You want them to have that sizzle as soon as they touch the pan. And I always layer mine out like this in a nice neat circle. Don't be afraid to get up in there. I know you can hear that. Love that sound. Keep going, you wanna be quick about it. I'll tell you, I'm using one hand to hold the camera and the other hand to put my scallops in. It's not intimidating at all. And once you add the scallops to it, it's gonna smell even better. Make sure to get them proper room in between each other, but don't touch them too much. You wanna let them sit and let them stay still long enough to be seared. Moving them around will hurt the color once you're done. And if you get a little closer, you can see that there's little bits of fat searing around each scallop. That's that brownness right here. That's a good sign that it's cooking well. Now turn the heat down a little. You don't want them to overcook or burn. Turn down to about medium level, a little above medium on your settings. And then you take a fork and we're going to just check the bottom, see how it looks. And as you can see, it has a bit of that brownness, but not quite enough for what I'm shooting for, so I'm gonna set it back. Took a moment to season it with roasted garlic pepper, lemon pepper, and a little bit of Old Bay. That's gonna give it that extra bit of flavor. And now we're gonna check it again. Now see, this is the color that you're looking for the bottom. So we're gonna flip every one of them now quickly so that they don't burn. Now this is how your scallops should look when they're done cooking on the stove top. Next you'll want to take a pan like this and a spatula to scoop your scallops into the pan where we're going to put them onto our skewers and wrap them in the bacon. I take one and a piece of bacon, and the bacon will sometimes shrink, so be mindful of this while you're baking it. And you wrap it around. It doesn't have to completely wrap the entire scallop. As long as make sure you get a nice bit of it. Then you take your skewer and stick it through a nice hefty part of the bacon. The skewer is what's going to hold it together, as you can see. Now, ideally, 3 scallops for each skewer, because you definitely gonna want some for yourself. One time I added 5 to it and I didn't have enough for the next day. No leftovers. That's not how I roll. It's as simple as that. You want to get both ends of the bacon on there securely so that it doesn't fall apart later. And here's the first skewer. Beautiful. Now that all the scallops are nice and snug in their bacon wraps, we're going to stick them back in the oven so that the bacon will have a chance to cook all the rest of the way through. Remember, use your own judgment. And here we are, cooked to perfection. Not greasy, all excellent, so beautiful. I'm so happy with how this turned out. I'm glad that I chose this to be my first video to make. It's something that really encompasses what I love about cooking. You know, how much detail goes to every dish, and how if you're not paying attention to or overlook certain other aspects, your dish could come out totally different. So remember, always build up good judgment in your cooking. If you want to cook for yourself, it's good to follow a recipe. But personally, I believe your own touch should always be developed.